Welcome to the Inferno Cast, everyone. I'm here today with one of my friends, Mickey Bay, who is a professional boxer and a super legit guy. We hit it off a few years ago. How you doing today, Mickey?
Good, good. How you doing down there in Arkansas?
Man, I'm making it. I'm making it. I'm sure you're doing the same thing out in Vegas. Um, Me and Mickey go back a few years. We actually met in Bentonville because he came down to the Bentonville Film Festival with Floyd Sr. And they did a thing at the gym, train with some of the kids, and we got to kind of meet each other for a couple days and hang out. And we just kind of stayed connected and hit it off. I always tell everybody, man, lightweights got to stick together. That's what it really is. That's
Yeah. uh,
um, I'll just jump right into it. I just wanted to kind of see first, when did you first discover boxing or know that you were in love with boxing?
well, actually, it was pretty much probably in my blood before I really knew it because my granddad used to box.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and he came up in the kind of the golden era back when a lot of the greats were fighting like Sugar Ray Robinson, Rocky
Yeah.
Marciano, and all of those guys. So,
Yeah.
but he
Oh,
died
man.
when he was young, so I never really got to really he didn't really get to show me boxing, but he tried to, but I was like maybe 6 or 7. So
Little guy.
yeah, so it was kind of in my blood, I guess. And in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from, guys like to fight and play sports. So I just
Yeah.
pretty much tried out every sport, and I like boxing. When I tried it, that was it.
Yeah. So, how old were you whenever you started taking boxing like pretty seriously? You were like, man, I think this is my sport.
I was about 12 or 13.
Yeah.
From that day on, I'm one of the kind of guys that I'm not gonna start something unless I'm gonna go all the way in with it. So once I
Yeah.
started, that was it. Like I wanted to become the best.
Was there
It's
a moment did you have a moment? Was there like an amateur match or just watching a pro match? Was there a moment that you have any memory of? Because some guys like for me, I just always knew I loved martial arts. As far as like punching, kicking, like I just
right.
always I didn't really have like one defining moment. But I always ask people like, because some people do. Did you have like a defining moment or just something that stuck in your head that was like, man, you know what? This is who I am.
Yeah, definitely. It probably was in me because even though a lot of people don't really know because of the name of boxing is a martial art as well, and
Absolutely.
I pretty much liked all forms of fighting. My dad was a state wrestling champ, so and
Awesome.
I always like different forms of martial arts other than boxing. So even video games and movies, watching the Bruce Lee stuff and
Yeah.
playing Street Fighter, Ken and Ryu, and Mortal Kombat. That's what kind of, and even the Ninja Turtles.
Oh man, we all of it. Yeah, I think we were all raised on Ninja Turtles. Like that influenced us all. That was like, man, I got to get some of that.
So that's where I got to say it first kind of kicked off. Just from watching those kind of movies and seeing the incredible stuff that they were doing, and from there, I just started watching boxing. My dad had a big collection of tapes, and I would just started watching a lot of the old school fighters, and ever since, I it been a part of me.
Yeah. Do you remember your first fight?
Yeah, I remember. Yup, it was in Cleveland. Actually, when I had my first fight, I fought a lot. I just kept on fighting. Like I think my first year of boxing, I might have had 30 fights maybe.
Oh man, you're every weekend. That's one
Yeah,
thing that is a little bit different with boxing than like kickboxing and MMA is just the volume of competition. Where you get together, you do the weekend smokers. Just you get so much more ring experience in boxing.
right. Yeah, you
Yes.
get a lot. It's fight shows. I used to drive my dad to drive me across country just to go fight. We drove everywhere around the
Yeah.
country, just to pick up that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have a favorite moment with your dad whenever you were traveling around doing boxing as a kid? Was there, anything that stood out that was like, man, this one time we went here and this was just a really cool experience, anything stands out from your childhood?
Yeah. I got a lot of stories, but one I'll say we had a story to where I think we had ended up we either drove or was on I think we caught a Greyhound maybe to fight, and it got canceled and we had to sleep in the Greyhound station overnight, and it was a big silver gloves tournament, and we showed up right before the fight, and I ended up fighting and winning, but I didn't get any rest, or I had to go straight to the arena. We had to go with our luggage
Oh, wow.
straight to the arena, and fought a tough fight, but I ended up winning the fight. That's one story that I can remember, that we ended up getting stuck in the Greyhound station, and
Yeah.
we didn't think we would even make it to fight, but I was hoping, they do like a draw to see who would fight who, but I got the toughest guy on that day, and I ended up fighting and winning. So, that was one memory that I got out of many of them.
Yeah, that's a lot of commitment, man. That's just sheer willpower right there,
Yeah,
just
definitely. Yo,
that's crazy. So, when how old were you when you turned pro?
I was 21.
21. How many amateur fights did you have?
I had I had around
Oh, I think we lost your video there. Oh, there it goes.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, I had around 170 fights.
170.
Yo,
Oh man, that is a lot of ring time, brother. Jeez.
yeah, I had a lot of fights. Sorry about that. I don't know if it blinked out. A call was trying to come in, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, I had a lot of fights. Because I never really took breaks. It's an all year round sport, and the more you win, the more you fight. So
Man, you've always been known for your work ethic. If there's one thing like I've definitely heard kind of in circles and just, over the years since we kind of met was just that,
right.
your work ethic was always a driving force. And so where do you feel like that work ethic came from? Was it just ingrained in you, or was there something that was just like, this is how you're successful, or?
Yeah, it was ingrained in me. Pretty much how I was raised. Um, where I came from, it's pretty much like you either had to be doing something positive, or it's too easy to slip up into something. So my parents always kept me in sports, or even if it was shoveling the snow, or we had to do we had to keep our priorities first, no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if we wanted to play outside, we might have to rake the leaves first, or shovel the snow,
I
and
bet
things.
you enjoy not having to shovel snow out in Vegas.
Well, in Cleveland, yeah, I'm glad that there's no snow here, but
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you're back in Ohio, there's a lot of snow up there.
oh, it's hot. Yeah, and we used to say, man, our friends didn't have to do it, but we would have me and my brother would have to. So, and my dad would have us like do like 300, 400, 200 push-ups every day,
Yeah.
and like 5 sets of chair dips every day before we can, do any type of playing outside. He just
That's awesome.
much, pretty much showed us we got to work for what we want.
Yeah. No, man, and on it, even just on those workouts, like I think sometimes people underestimate like how much body weight exercises can help, especially as a combat athlete. Like yeah, a big nice gym is nice, but man, you can make do.
Oh yeah, the body weight exercise is a whole nother strength. You can I get guys all the time that can probably lift 300, 400 pounds of weight, but can't do 3 pull-ups, and
Right.
they might weigh 200 pounds. So, I mean, that just tell you right there, it's different kind of strength. Like
Yeah.
that's a whole nother level of strength, the push-ups, pull-ups, and your own body weight.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
no
kind
doubt, man.
that kind of translate more in like any kind of martial art, boxing, or things like that.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, especially because like any of the combat sports that all of us are involved in, like it's really timing, distance, and moving body weight. Like that's really what like at its core fundamental. That's what I feel like it gets down to. Because like even in boxing, like you got to move people either by moving around them with your footwork, or like the shoulder bumps and like you got to get people to be where you need them to be so you can counter with the timing. And it's feeling that leverage to move body weight. And I feel that body weight exercise seem to help that.
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, it's a lot too. From doing martial arts, any kind of combat sport is, and it's unpredictable. It's anything can happen. As far as cuts or injuries, and
Yeah.
I faced all of those things in the ring. So it's times I had to fight with broken hands
Ooh.
and things like that. So it's a lot that goes on that's unplanned.
What's the worst fight you ever had that you had to fight through injured? You're just like, no other choice. I got to make do.
Well, I ended up winning the world title with a messed up hand, and I got
No
surgery
way.
after. Yeah,
Really?
I ended up getting surgery after the fight. I was a big underdog,
Yep.
so everybody found out about my hand kind of behind the scenes, and I was a huge underdog, and I still ended up winning the fight just off of
So what
strategy.
year? And this was the IBF
Yeah,
championships?
yep, it was in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So was your hand injured? So your hand was injured beforehand. People
Yeah,
found
it was that
out.
bad for years, but I just never got to surgery
Yeah.
because I didn't want to stop fighting. But I knew it got to a point to where I could barely close my hands. So I just
Yeah.
said after I win this title, which is crazy for me to think that I would win that way, but I guess you got to think it into existence and just find a way. But when it happened, about a month later, or a few weeks later, I ended up getting surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. So did they have to go in? Was it like more of a wrist, injury, or was it one of the main bones here? Like,
It was the wrist, and it was a bone spur in my hand,
uh,
and it had my tendons kind of crooked. And one thing that they didn't see, that didn't show up in the X-ray or MRI, was a loose bone floating under that you couldn't see. So they told me that after they did the surgery, they said they didn't even know how I was fighting or doing anything.
yeah.
But that's the willpower and the power of the mind, I guess.
That's it, man. People underestimate, like, the body can do amazing things,
Right.
and the mind leads the body, and that mental fortitude. There's so much of that. And it applies to other things in your life. I think that's one thing a lot of fighters, especially younger fighters, because when you get into fighting, a lot of time there's a little bit more bravado and pride and ego with it, of like, y'all need to see what my skills are. And then as you get older, I feel like it starts to shift into like what you can push your limits to. What are you capable of? And it starts bleeding in other parts of your life. Do you feel like that happened with you, like as you were coming up?
Oh, definitely. What you said was spot on. The mind controls the body. It's kind of like if you ever fail as a kid or you bumped yourself, it might not hurt as bad until you actually see the blood and in your mind, people start to panic. It's like if you just like that's just the example, but whatever you think in your mind, I mean, that's definitely going to play a key role. It's like the computer. Our mind is the computer that send a signal through our body. So if you start thinking negative or
Right.
something like that, then a lot of times that's what it comes to.
Man, and that's like so true because they used to. I've heard the old terminology of you die 1,000 deaths, where like whatever you keep repeating in your mind, and
Right.
if that's negative, then it's like, man, you're losing every moment of every day, and it's not working out. You got to shift that to the positive, which that's a skill in itself. But now with social media, like that's an even harder skill because you're getting constant reinforcement of that negativity you can go find real easy just with a click of a button. There's a whole list of people that want to tell you everything negative.
Oh yeah, and but that's one of my key ingredients is just being real positive, thinking positive, and I know how to, just knowing how to look at stuff at face value and knowing that that's going to come with it, no matter what. You could do all the best things in the world. You can feed everybody in the world and give everybody shelter, and you will still get a bunch of people that'll find stuff to say about you.
That is true, man. That is true. So like with the mindset thing, man, because like that is always the deal with me because when I look at high level athletes, very rarely do they run into technical problems. Like they'll make a technical mistake, but usually it's not like, oh, I've never seen that punch or I've never been there before. It's usually decision making, which goes back into the psychology of performance. So what do you feel like when you're prepping for a fight or you're going into a training camp? Like, what are some tools that you use to stay sharp, to exercise the brain to where you know that no matter what happens, that you're going to find a way to keep the rhythm, and execute the game plan?
Well, one thing that I do is I pretty much just try to go in like a blank canvas and just be ready to adapt.
Yeah.
Like I go in and do the basic things, like the defense, hit, not get hit, and then just go from there and feel the situation out, like, and see how it's going. Like I don't come in with too many expectations because sometimes things can go another way. So I work on everything so that way, the term stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yep.
I go in just waiting to feel the situation out. And that way I can say, okay, I don't go in with the expectation because if it's different, you might not be prepared for it. So I just kind of go in. It's kind of like, you want to dip your toe in the water. You know how if you see a pool or a lot of times you don't just jump in, you might dip your toe in it first to see,
Yeah.
I kind of take that approach.
So you've probably heard the term quicksand over the years, where people like they get in and like you just get behind and you get behind and you behind.
Right.
For competitors, and my thing is like I talk about it as competitors, but honestly, man, I mean like this is real life. Like people out there with regular jobs and family issues, stuff like that, they get caught in the same thing as quicksand deal. But when you're in the fight and you feel like you're in the quicksand and you just struggle and getting ahead, how do you deal and cope with that to turn it around?
Well, I always think of it like when you look at a marathon, most people that start out winning don't win the whole race. So I just kind of look at it like just staying poised and figuring out a way and not panicking.
Yeah.
That's another mental strategy is um, you know, just knowing that you still got a chance to pull ahead, and not to
Yeah.
panic and just figure out a way to adapt or at least to your best ability try to.
Yeah.
From there, that's the best way to approach it. And if something is going to happen, let it happen by action, not mentally shutting down.
Man, that right there, that is golden. If something's gonna happen, let it happen by action.
Just
That
let it happen by action, and it's nothing you can control from that point on. I mean, but if you do it mentally, you'll beat yourself up. You'll say, "Man, I told myself this, but I knew physically I could have." We all had those situations just in life, period,
yeah.
where it's things that you didn't go after or things you regret because you didn't even try because your mind said don't do it, or and that's very important.
Yeah. It kind of almost turns into like fear management. And
Exactly.
and I feel like as fighters and combat athletes, it's almost like we almost have an advantage over most people because we've been in circumstances where a moment changes it in our favor, where it's like, man, I mean, I was getting beat up round after round after round. Like, I remember one of my fights, man, I took a right cross to the chin. It put me down. Somehow I pulled out an armbar. I don't even remember the fight, remember anything. Like, my coach left the corner to go get smell salts because he thought I was done. Comes back and my arm's raised, and it's just like in a moment everything can change for the better. And and then when we look at our regular lives, like
Uh,
you start realizing you can apply it to your regular life too.
oh, you hit it 100%. That's how I approach life. It being any kind of combat fighter, I think that it does make life easier if you know how to control, and just kind of leave the sport where it is and don't wear it on your sleeve too much. Oh,
Yeah.
it can make situations, and the same way you described is how I think when it comes to normal life. Like we go through a physical level of pain just to get the results that we want in life and in our sport, that it just makes things easier outside of it. You should be able to wheel through. It's no bigger pain than the stuff that we pretty much go through to get a enjoyable result that we want. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's exactly how I look at things.
And I mean, and just think about just like, especially on a professional level and at the level that you have been successful at, you have so many people with opinions. that want to be critical, and, people want to be judgmental, to where when you falter, or even when you don't falter, when people perceive you of like, of you faulting or just something they don't like, you get way more feedback of the negativity. And that's one thing I always ask a lot of the guys that have to deal with it is, how do you handle the negative press on social media, or people like, because there's times when you're sitting at home and you're kind of just having a rough day anyway, and something didn't go well, social media's down on you, like, how do you handle it in like the difficult times, or do you have to just get through it? Because I know there's some times where I'm like, man, it's just going to be a rough night. Tomorrow will be better. But then there's other times where like I can reboot it, and switch it and be like, you know what? Find the positivity, find the gratitude. What do you usually do?
I think what I do is a lot of times I really don't pay attention much. Like I don't research myself a lot, and when I do things, I might just because I just pretty much got back on social media. So, but even when things are that way, I don't really. I might do an interview, but never even. I might not even watch it.
Right.
Like sometime I don't. But if I do happen to run into the negativity, I just realize everybody is different and got a different opinion. But that's just a negative. That's really a problem that they got to deal with because
Yeah.
for them to even go out of their way to care that much to say something negative, it's like okay,
Yeah.
I must be doing something right. If you took the energy,
Yeah.
if you took energy out of your day to comment or to say something, I must be. I mean, I must be doing something right, or you wouldn't even be paying attention at all. That's kind
Yeah.
of
The
how.
fact that the fact that they even know where to go post something, or that you even exist. Yeah. Like,
Oh, exactly. Like if we just sitting at home minding our business, and you go out of your way to come to me, and I didn't come to you, then I just kind of laugh at it.
yeah. I know, and that comes from like a strong sense of self. Like you
That
got to have some real, like, know who you are and what you're about.
really do.
Um, and so when you see guys that don't have that, especially in the sports, whether it be professional sports, baseball, basketball, combat sports, when you see these guys that you can tell they don't have that strong sense of self, what do you feel like helps people build that up?
Honestly, I do know a lot of top athletes in every sport that has that problem, and I wonder why they care. But I just tell them 9 times out of 10, a lot of these people, it might be somebody with a fake account or anything, somebody that you beat, or somebody that's just wish they were in your shoes, and
Yeah.
you know they can't do what you can do, so they go out of their way to try to put you down. I mean, that's just the way of the world. Like nobody likes the same color, nobody likes the same food. It's just, I
True.
mean, you just got contrast. It's always going to be something
Yeah.
like, yeah. So I
And
just
that's
look at anything.
that's such a healthy perspective too, man. Because like when you think about when people are struggling with that, is it really goes down to a belief system. Because look at boxing. So if I start boxing and I get frustrated every time I get hit in the face,
Right.
and that starts meaning I'm losing, man, I'm never going to do very well, because dude, it's boxing. You're going to get hit in the face. Like,
Oh,
I mean, it's part of
and
it. And so I think you got to adjust your belief system to what that means. When I get hit in the face, what does that really mean versus what did I used to think that means? And I feel like what you're saying is the same way of like, what does it really mean when people are saying stuff online or social media, or people are giving you flack, versus what do people sometimes allow it to mean?
yeah, I just look at it like, even if you look at the world in general, you got sunny days, rainy days, cloudy days. I mean, that's just it's no different with people. We pretty much patterned after nature. So it's like, look at the situation we in now. Like, where we in this quarantine situation.
Yeah.
I'm sure guys like us really not taking it as hard as a lot of people, and that's one of the benefits of being a fighter. I always look at it like things could be worse,
Absolutely, man.
and they really can be. Me and you sitting here, we chatting, and it's like you said, 50 years ago, we wouldn't even be able to do this. So I
No.
look at things could be worse. Things can be worse, but things will always get better.
Yeah, I always say I've done more with less. That's kind of the way I always look at it because it's like I'm always appreciative that things are not worse, but I also know things are going to get better because I'm like, man, I have done more with less. Like I have had more difficult times in my life. I have had real struggles and found a way out. And whatever we're in, this is no different. Whether that be like getting punched in the face in the ring, where I'm like, got to find a way out, or if it's something like this quarantine thing that's changing businesses and the world we know it. It's just finding a way to win. You just got to believe that you will find a way to win no matter what.
Oh, 100%. And now we in a time where people actually forced, to have to not be able to do certain things. And like you said a little earlier in the interview, us being fighters, we are already kind of used to that by nature, having to figure it out. And, our lives are literally on the line too, as well. So us
Yeah, I
having to
mean, because
figure it
man,
out.
there's some real physical repercussions. I mean, like 170 amateur fights. I mean, how many pro fights have you had now?
I had around close to 30.
Yeah, so I mean, you're at the 200 fight mark, man. You got to look at, brain injuries, things of that
Right.
nature. Your hands already
Yeah.
been busted.
That's why I concentrate on defense, getting hit the least as possible. Like, hitting and not getting hit, being smart, even knowing when to hang it up. You want to go out on top. You don't want to wait till
Yeah.
you start getting beat up a lot and let your pride get in the way.
Yep. I see that a lot. I mean, just the number of, I mean, how many times have we been sitting there like, man, this guy shouldn't be taking this fight? I mean, it's
Right.
all the time. And
Right.
you don't want to be that athlete because, I mean, you got to think of your family and like longevity of the second half of your life, man. I mean, you gotta stay
Oh,
healthy and I mean, and it's always a gamble because it's like, well, who gets in the ring for money? Who gets in a cage for money? I mean, so y'all already not wired right. And we get that. So like that's the even baseline. Like we're not wired right. We get that. But
yeah. Right.
what are you
Yeah.
willing to
Take a lot
sacrifice?
of hurt to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you willing to sacrifice for that benefit? And like you said, man, you're playing it smart where you're approaching it tactically and strategically to where it's all like, no, I'm not out here trying to be tougher than these guys. I'm out here trying to be smarter than these guys.
100%. And passing it down, like you said, when most people retire from fighting, you still a young person
Yeah.
in life. You might be considered a little older as an athlete, but you get guys that now they retiring. Maybe guys can go into their 40s now. Pretty, it's kind of common now for a lot of athletes to. But even retiring in your early 40s, you're still a young person in life.
Yeah.
You like reaching the middle age, or you still like a young man. So you gotta have something else already lined up, another hobby, passion. It
Yeah.
can't just be fighting. Like, you gotta wanna. And my thing is, I like to help other people, whether it's through boxing or feeding people or anything. So
Yeah.
boxing is part of me. It's not all of who I am.
Yeah. And that's one thing you see when you define yourself by the achievements of a sport or achievements in life, man, that's a lonely life. It's unfulfilling. I mean, because like
Yeah,
for you, you win the IBF title, which is, I mean, that's it, man. Like that's one of the big things that you can do as a boxer. And then you get there, and if you don't have a good, strong sense of self like yourself, you can really struggle of like, okay, now what? You know?
oh, 100%. I see it all the time, and what I did was learn from that because I saw guys that won NBA championships, a whole lot of money in boxing championships and Super Bowl rings, and on the outside life, it's like, man, you don't see as much happiness, and I think it's because they got caught up in too much of the glitz, glamour, and the lights, but
Yeah.
that's temporary, and that's really show business. At the end of the day, it's not even really real. I
No.
mean, it don't like in real life. I mean, yeah, it's fun, it's entertaining, but in life, it really doesn't matter. Like in the time that we in now, no matter how much money you got or the fame, you still got to be careful. You still on quarantine, and
Yeah.
you know better than anybody else. Like, the malls are closed and all of those kind of things. So money doesn't matter right now. And I think that seeing things like that happen, I think maybe even when this is over, I think it'll help a lot of people.
Yeah, give them a different perspective. I mean,
I know.
it's like the undefeated fighters, man. Like I feel bad for undefeated fighters. I'm like, man, if you've never lost, like that is heavy. That's heavy to carry all the time. Um, because you got to have a little taste of defeat at some point in your life to give you balance. Because
Oh,
you
for
got to.
sure.
I mean, so if you were going to talk to somebody about adjusting their mental perspective going into being a high level athlete, we're trying to adjust their perspective to where they focus more on what they're capable of instead of the negativity in their life. What would be like some tools or something that you would kind of set them on the path with that'd be like, look, man, you're about to step into this thing. This is what you want to achieve. Here's like 3 pieces of advice that I would give you moving forward.
One, I would say, uh, one of the biggest things is you got to have another passion outside of the sport, because no matter what, it's 100% fact that you won't always be the same as an athlete. That's, evident. So you want to have something else that doesn't have anything to do with competition. Have something outside of the
So
sport that
what's
makes.
that for you? So that's the first thing, but what's that for you?
For me, well, lately I've been training a couple great fighters coming up. I like helping people, whether it's helping feed people or just give advice, and just pretty much just being a down to earth person that's just pretty much I'm just a person with open arms. If I can deliver any kind of message or any kind of help, then I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, it's pouring into others. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
that's
my thing.
definitely.
That's what keeps me happy, just knowing that I'm normal. I don't care what kind of belts I won or anything. I'm a normal person. I'm not better than anybody. I just worked hard at my craft and earned what I earned, but I still got to go to sleep, eat food to survive like anybody else.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so one is you got to have a passion outside of the sport. What's two?
Two, I would say you got to know how to take losses the same way you would take wins. Like, you can't celebrate and you want all of the glory and celebrate and be in a good mood, and you want the praise, and you got to realize it's the other side of the coin can come, because everybody was undefeated at one point.
Yeah,
I,
that's
even
true.
me, even me. So every single person was undefeated at one point at everything in life.
Yeah.
You see, but my thing is, you just got to realize that if you got the blessing to be doing what you're doing, then you got to kind of just don't let it take over your life. Just realize that you can dust yourself off and get back up and try again. You don't have to let a loss define you, or don't have any fear of it.
Yeah.
Everybody loves a comeback story, kind of even more than. My thing is this: how can you really learn from success if you learn a lot more from failures than success? Success, you're gonna kind of get complacent and you're gonna get on autopilot and relax. But losing, you go back to the drawing board and you say, okay, what can I do to fix this? And that's a part of life. No
Yeah.
different than the world. The world hasn't always been this way. It was a flood and it came back, and the world hasn't been the same. What, every 10, 20,000 years, it's a different. So I just look at life kind of like that. Like, nothing is really that serious when you think about it. Life
Yeah.
is really like a big chessboard in a game. It's serious, but it's not. When you happen to pass away or on your obituary, it's not going to be how many failures do you even remember right now in your life? It was time that you were probably scared, and you won't even remember probably 1% of it.
It's true.
We've been living so many years, and it's times that we thought something was so serious you couldn't even name 1% of them right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like I always I tell a story about like, hey, do you guys remember when you were a little kid and you had a best friend when you're like, 4, 5, 6 years old? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, hey, y'all still best friends? And most time they're not. They're like, man, I can't even remember that kid's name. I don't know what happened, but there's a time in your life where like that person was your life, and it just,
Exactly. You know, and that's how I think. I just think I try to think of the future and what's really important. All of this is one day is gonna come to pass. So
yeah,
you shouldn't get too caught up in anything, and definitely don't get caught up in the praise. Some people love to be praised.
yeah.
I don't think that's healthy at all. I think that you should just take the compliments, and then and just go back home and just be who you are and be a regular person, because that's all you are at the end of the day.
Yeah,
That's just a title. That's just a title and a temporary thing. You can
a
still catch
moment
a
in
cold.
time.
You can still catch a cold. You still gonna cough, sneeze, get hungry. It's not like you a superhuman where you could stay up for a week straight because you got a world title. You got to do everything that the average person has to do. So I always got that mindset, like, you know, take that, put the costume, you wear the costume in the gym and in competition, and put it back in the closet when you finish.
Man, I like that. That's a really good analogy because a lot of times, especially in combat sports now, like it's the entertainment business, really. I mean, it's like you gotta
Yep,
look the part and play the part, and and
that's it.
there's parts, and that's one thing a lot of young fighters struggle with because to young fighters, it's defining who they are. It's like this is who I am, this is what I'm worth, this is what I got, and they don't think about it from that entertainment consumer perspective, and then their career struggles, because they're not thinking about brand management, and PR and things of
Yep,
that nature, just making the plays because. And like you said, because things that used to be so serious, like you just look at our history in the last 50 years where you go look at old news articles where something was just a really big deal in like 1981, and then now we look and we laugh and we're like, oh man, I can't believe they thought that was a big deal. It's the
right.
same thing, it's
It
just that
it can't
perspective.
be the past. It's going, everything is going to be the past one day.
So
And
what's your third piece of advice for people that are going to go out there and try to be the best athlete in the world, try to be successful?
I would say try to watch who you got around you, and
I hear
don't.
that a lot.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, because sometimes you never know, and I mean that male or female. You got to try the best of your ability to. If you got a son, a sister, or brother, I would approach the situation and try to take the advice I would give them, because sometimes you might take a bigger risk, but if you got a kid, you wouldn't want them to be around certain people. I would say you got to take that approach for yourself as well, and you got to know all money isn't good money, and
That's
and
true.
and
I
and,
like
and the spotlight. Watch out! It's a difference of what kind of spotlight. Don't always chase the money and spotlight, because it can backfire on you. You can get a lot of spotlight being a villain and get the most views because you're
it.
doing some crazy stuff, or but you got to realize that every action got a reaction. So you might make a lot of money by being a villain and do crazy stuff, but it might hit you later on in life. So you got to realize, are you really ready to handle the path that you're going on? You should think in the future, am I willing to handle the backlash that can come from it? And
Yeah.
if you got any doubts about it, I wouldn't even take that path, and or I wouldn't take this money or go this route. I would
Yeah.
rather I would rather take the I would rather take the stairs in the elevator if I know that down the road. You got to try to see down the road and see what you really want overall, and take money and fame out of the equation, because those things, like you mentioned, social media, it's all about attention, and we see people doing crazy things for attention. I mean, I see people doing ridiculous stuff. I saw people licking toilets during this coronavirus just to get views. It's like, come on, like, I mean, let's
Yeah.
not go too far just for views, because at the end of the day, are people really that important to impress? Like, what are you going to get out of impressing a human being?
Right.
Think about it. Everybody
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what is it, 7, 8 billion people on Earth? Everybody's a human being at the end of the day. Some got more money than others. Some might be stronger than others. Some might be cooked, but everybody got something better than the next person. There's no competition, and it's not even worth trying to impress people because nobody got all of the answers.
That's true,
And,
man.
and by me looking at life like that, it's like, all right, I'm just happy to wake up every day, and from there, everything else is a plus. That's how I look at things, and that's what helps me stay happy.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a great perspective too. So, something a little bit more finite about boxing. So you've been training a young up and comer. You've been kind of pouring into the youth. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, man?
Oh yeah, that's been a lot of fun. Me and Devin Haney's dad, Bill Haney, we've been co-training Devin Haney, who's pretty much, everybody in the boxing world is looking at him to be the next Mayweather, to take over the Mayweather throne. And both of us had histories being with the Mayweathers for over a decade. He actually started out with the Mayweathers at 7 or 8 years old. So, I've actually known him since he was very young. And it's kind of fun to be able to help him and pass down some of my teachings and knowledge and I'm just blessed that they brought me aboard,
Yeah.
to help him out and to help train him. It's a huge blessing. Like, it's more than you can ask for. Like, I mean, it's a blessing. That's all I can really say. And it's fun because he's very dedicated. Because this guy's still a kid. He just turned 21, so he's pretty much, and I mean, he a lot of times before we work out, he's playing the PlayStation for an hour or two. And then but one thing about him, he'd get up off his couch, put on his workout stuff, and work out. Like, right now we're working out in his garage. Since it's quarantine, he already making millions of dollars. He can be sitting down or just partying or this or that. Even in his home, he can be doing these things, but he wants to work. I told him to call me whenever you want to work. It doesn't matter what time. And he calls me mostly every day to work, and he doesn't even have a fight coming up. He probably won't fight until sometime in the summertime, but he's staying ready and ahead of the curve. And I'm 100% sure that he'll be the one to take over. He'll be the next guy that everybody's flying out to Las Vegas to see fight. It'll be him.
That's awesome, man. Does he have any idea like what he's capable of? Like, because you see people that just have so much talent and they have just everything right in front of them, but then there's people that just sometimes they don't even know. They're like, "What? I'm just doing what I do." Does he know kind of what's in front of him, what's coming, or is he still just like a kid having fun?
It's kind of both. Like, it's like he a kid just having fun. I think he knows, but he's just very humble. Like, he's so humble and just he's a real good kid. Like, you don't find too many guys like him. He's like a LeBron James when he was his age, just coming into the league. He just doesn't. But that's what keeps him working harder. His dad did a great job raising him and giving him that hungry mentality, and that he just got a humble spirit. Like, he knows how good he is, but he always wants to improve. And he really wants to be the best way more than a lot of than any other fighter right now. I can see that he really wants that throne.
How many fights has he had so far?
He's about 24-0 right now.
Okay, so he's on his
Yeah,
way.
and the youngest world champion in the world.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's a big it's fun and it's a big task and everything for me. But
Yeah.
I really enjoy it because he makes my job easier by how hard he works and wanting to always train, work out, no complaints. I mean, this kid is just a man child. Like, the world is really going to enjoy, seeing him, for the many years to come.
Yeah. And so since you've been kind of influencing and mentoring him, Is there one thing that you feel like you're always kind of reinforcing with him, whether it be like a career management or a technical piece? Like, is there one thing that you feel like you're just saying a lot to him consistently?
Um,
Besides, put your hands up.
man, it's not too much. He's a rare young man. It's not a lot that I really have to say. Like, other than us pretty much going over repetition as far as our boxing moves and stuff. Other than that, he's just on top of his job. Like, he doesn't have he doesn't have bad habits outside of the ring. Or I mean,
Awesome.
he's a great role model and a great kid.
Yeah. So on a technical side, if you were going to talk about technical boxing, best in the world, what are a couple of fundamentals that you think are really overlooked or get, the labeled with underrated? Like the subtleties. They call it the sweet science, where it's like, man, it is so
Right.
technical. And that's, I
Yep.
think, the big challenge, whenever MMA was coming up and the MMA versus boxing and all that fun stuff, whenever Floyd and Connor fought and we kind of caught up
Right.
there in Vegas, that was a fun time, but it was just like people don't know what they're looking at, like science,
Right. They don't.
the science of boxing is so subtle. So
Right.
what are a couple things that you think technically is like, here's some underrated stuff that will make the difference?
Well, number one, you said the word science, which is the key. It's the sweet science, and one of the reasons that is because boxing is probably the only sport, other than a couple other martial arts, that you can't learn to do on your own. Like, how you can go play football, basketball, baseball. I mean, you got guys that can play at Rucker Park with the NBA players, and guys that can probably catch a football or throw. You can't learn how to throw a punch correctly on your own or defend one.
Hmm.
Nobody in the world can just look and learn how to do it without actually learning from the inside. You can't just become a good boxer.
Hmm.
It's a way of doing it. It's almost like, yeah, you can go sit in the airplane and look at all of the buttons and you can watch the pilot all you want, but he knows the actual science of how to take off, how to land, all of those things. So boxing is the same way. And I think that people underrate the IQ, distant, like the IQ of the game. And it's
Hmm.
not just macho. Like, the casual fan might think, people just rock 'em, sock 'em robots.
Yeah.
But it's actually strategy. It's 12 rounds, so knowing how to adapt, knowing how
Yeah.
to fight each opponent different, defense, knowing how to conserve your energy, or if you get hurt, you might fight a power puncher and get hurt. How to disguise it and recover without it being noticeable. Um, you got things like, this guy got more speed than me. How do I beat that speed? He can hit harder than me, or he can. It's like a physical chess match. That's the best way to explain it. It's
Yeah.
like playing physical chess, and I mean, it's the sweet science. Like, that's all. The only way to explain it. It's a physical chess match.
Yeah. So if you were going to talk about something specific as far as like, improving somebody's jab or, trying to make the feint work better.
Right.
What are a couple details that you think that a couple of the guys that, are avid strikers trying to make their boxing better? What's a couple little subtle details you'd be like, look, man, you need to be working on the step with the punch. You need to work on the hips or, you know,
Right. I would say repetition. It's like the saying Bruce Lee said. He said, "Fear the man that practiced one punch 1,000 times instead of the man that practiced, 1,000 kicks, different kicks." When
yeah,
you concentrate on that one thing, like you mentioned, the jab, make your key focus be the jab. Once you keep practicing it and you throwing it right, and everybody's different. That's the thing. Like, you got to know that everybody's different and throws the jab different. So you got to kind of find your niche and the way that it works best for you. Stick to it and try to improve it and get it better and better.
I love that because it's like that's the true coach's advice. Do it 1,000 times, then do it 1,000 more, man.
Repetition, that's with anything. If you got a hard test coming up, you're not gonna pass it unless you study it. You can't just go into it just thinking like, okay, I'm gonna just freestyle and just go in and take the test and pat. Nope, you got to study. You got to figure out what it is that's going to be on the test, and it's the same thing with whether it's a jab or punch. You got to figure out the correct way to throw it, the speed on it, the way to turn it over, the foot placement, balance, all of that.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So you always pouring into everybody else and into into Devin and the people you train with, and like you're always been a guy that has a really big heart.
Thank you.
So I wanted to kind of get a little bit of perspective of like, what are some things that were said to you coming up by some mentors, influences? What are a couple moments for you that you feel like kind of defined you as who you are, that was like, man, I remember this one time, coach said this or dad said this and it just hit me. What were a couple times whenever people poured into you that affected you for your whole career life? Any moments that kind of stand out whenever something just affected you permanently?
Yeah, I took a lot of things, and not even from just guys like Mayweather and, just from people like neighbors. And I learned things, from neighbors, school teachers. I mean, I remember simple things they said to me that meant a lot to me. It could be, I still remember even when I was 10 or 11 where a teacher graded my paper and he put the way that he complimented me on the paper. I still remember exactly what he said. Like, and this was like my 6th or 7th grade teacher. He probably wouldn't even, he'd probably be amazed that I even remember. But I just like the simple things like that. Like, neighbors that they might have just gave me a baseball glove because of what they saw in me just as a person. It didn't have anything to do with money, talent. It was just like, man, I see something in this kid. Like, he can be doing all of these things or getting in trouble, but I always see him either playing basketball, football, riding his bike, and being respectful to people. So honestly, most of them were pretty much people like that, like neighbors and elders and, and things like that. I appreciate the guys like the Mayweathers and a lot of friends I got that's, in the NBA and different things like that. But I just look at the simple things where money didn't matter, fame didn't matter. And a lot of blessings that came off my true character. And that's how I still approach things now. And that's how I've always been. And I pretty much got years taken off of my career in boxing for having that kind of mindset. Little do people know because, it's a shady business. So a lot of things happen. But I never complain about it really or go out in the media and cause an uproar like I could have, which could have caused me a lot of years off of my career. But I just like to stick to who I am, and I believe in that everything to come back around is meant for me. And I believe that that's why I got a blessing and a call like, Devin Haney and his dad to bring me in. They could have called anybody else in the world, but, they brought me in. So that's the approach that I take.
No, I like that, man. I always tell people, especially like my coaches and instructors, and just when I'm around other leaders and influencers, I'm like, man, you never know when you're somebody else's moment. And you gotta lead your life day after day knowing you might be somebody's moment right then, and you'll never remember. Because I've had things in my life where people have said things to me or just interactions that defined who I am today that they had no idea even happened. Like that.
Right.
They have no memory of that. But I always try to bring that up to people in a position of influence. Is you got to be aware of that, because you just never know whenever you're somebody's moment, and it can either define them in the right path or it can, influence them in the wrong direction. And we can't be perfect all the time. We're going to make mistakes, and people need to learn from our flaws just as much as they do from our successes. But just that mindset shift, I feel like that helps people's kind of their path because they start realizing how much influence they really have. Because I feel like that's what's underrated. Most people just don't realize how much of a platform and influence over people that they really have.
Yeah, and that's how I look at things. And the main thing I think of, treat people how you want to be treated. It's that simple. If you think about life and just use that exact model, your life would be way better. If you, like you said, nobody's perfect, but if you got that in the front of your mind, I mean, the world overall would be a better place if everybody just went off of that one. Nobody likes the feeling of getting treated bad.
Yeah.
If you do, then you just got some kind of issue. But everybody
Yeah.
got the same feelings. Everybody in the world was born with the same feelings that we can't control.
Yeah.
Sad, happy, all of the feelings that everybody had, we all got them. So to me, if you can't be an addition or a positive addition in somebody's life or to somebody else, then you shouldn't even come around, or it's no point in putting any negative into a situation, especially
Yeah.
on purpose. Everybody can make a mistake, but to me, you shouldn't come into anybody's life just to mess it up. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
And that's what we're always hoping for. So now on to your career, like you training, you kind of making another run. You got anything cooked up? You considering maybe playing again or?
Yeah, I'll probably get a couple more in. I look at it as the finish line.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, it's a serious sport, and I'm blessed to be able to talk to you and to comprehend things, and because this sport is dangerous. So
Yeah.
I think I probably get a couple more in, and go out on top and keep on helping,
Yeah. For
helping
sure,
the
man.
younger and helping other ways.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt, man. Well, like I said, I mean, I'm really excited to see you kind of coming into the coaching realm because that's one thing since when we met in Bentonville, man. Because I've been around people and coaches and athletes my whole life, and there's times whenever you just know when somebody has a calling to be an influencer and a coach. So I'm really excited to see what that chapter is going to look like in your life because I think it's going to go really well and I have a funny feeling that you're going to be falling in love with that way more than having your hand raised, where you're like, well, man, I might go
Honestly,
catch a couple, but
honestly,
uh,
I do, because I never was the kind of guy that wanted the spotlight. Of course, I wanted to be a legend, but I never was the kind of guy like, oh, I want to be a superstar.
yeah,
I was always like, even in school, like I would be winning national tournaments, and guys would be like, man, you should capitalize and get the girls. And I never really even wanted people to know that I was number one in the country. My
yeah,
teacher would find out through the newspaper and to say, why didn't you tell me? Like, you just was with Lennox Lewis, or you just won an ad, you number one in the country, you should have told me. And they would want to take like a day off just for the class to like ask me questions, but I would never mention it.
yeah.
Like, I was always that kind of person that, you know, if I had a choice to make 5 world champions, I would rather do that than me be the best fighter ever.
Yeah, it's
That's just
addictive,
what kind of
man.
person I am.
Yeah, it's addictive. It's fulfilling where it's just like pouring into people and just being able to influence in a positive way. Like it's the more you get into coaching and just get engaged with people, the harder it is to kind of bring back that inward focus to be a high level athlete because you got to be a little selfish as a high level athlete, a little bit.
Oh, as
Um,
an athlete, yeah, and I'm a kind of guy like I just think like it's better to give than to receive, and
yeah,
that's how I think.
especially
So,
in boxing, especially when you're in the ring.
oh, definitely in the ring for sure, and I just approach life like that. Like,
Yeah,
the more that I give, just the better for me. I just feel
yeah,
better, and it's just genuinely in me, so I don't have to force it,
and that's
or
it, man.
it's just who I am. So that's what makes it even funner.
Authenticity, man. Authenticity. Well, man, I appreciate you taking time to catch up with
That,
me. Definitely going to be seeing you soon. And, I'm in Vegas all the time, and we're going to try to get you out here to kind of punch some of the boys in the face and
oh,
have a
for
good
sure,
time.
whenever y'all want me down when this is over, yep, just let me know.
Always, man. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks. Talk to you soon.